Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the Identify People First podcast. We've had this running now for about 4 months, and we've spoken with lots of different CEOs, CIOs, leaders of legal tech firms and legal services companies. And one area that's kind of been in our mind for a little while is hearing some of the issues and the pain points that some companies are going through, and maybe the sector generally has been going through. And we've been incredibly hesitant to almost throw a solution into the mix and sell in these conversations. But there are two products that we absolutely would love to introduce into the conversation. And if nothing else, it's to highlight some of the innovation that exists currently in the UK tech market, some of the companies that are really developing some cool and exciting tools that we think suit the legal services and the legal tech market in particular. Which leads me on to two people we'd like to introduce you to. Firstly, I'd like to introduce you to Jed Stone, who's the Chief Product Officer from Issured Consulting. Welcome, Jed.
Hiya, how you doing?
And secondly, for Jill Battley, who's the former Head of Intelligence at Scotland Yard Serious Crime Directorate. And Jill, that must be a hell of a business card, but welcome, Jill, as well. Thank you to both of you for joining, and you guys will know Pete and I, co-founders of Identifi.
Hello.
We're sitting quite close, but you'll be pleased to know we are kind of in the same bubble these days, so it feels okay. So just to move this on and give people a sense as to Jed, why Chief Product Officer, and maybe to touch upon the point at the very beginning. Do you want to give us a quick rundown of Issured and who it is that you represent, because that'll help kick the conversation off.
Yeah, sure. So Issured's a company that was set up by initially 5 of us. We all came from a defence and security background, and we met on the delivery of a national programme of work for policing. We actually all got on. And we thought, actually, well, why do we want to go off and find more different people to work with? But we were kind of in that same environment for a good couple of years, and decided, actually, why don't we just keep working together? And so Issured was set up with that kind of background, and since that time, I suppose we all brought different skills to the company. And since that time, we've really enjoyed some great success continuing to work with policing in the UK and overseas, as well as other markets as well. So that's Issured.
I should note, Jed, that Identifi and Issured do actually have a kind of a collective partnership, and we work with Issured as our consulting partner. And in fact, here it is, in all honesty, we share offices as well, but we are on separate sides. But the relationship is such that we're fully aware of Issured and the work that they do, and vice versa. So it is not often that we kind of crash the two together and actually talk about the same area. So this is something we might do a little bit more, but we do know you, Jed, don't we?
You do, yes, too well.
Of course. Cool. So this is almost a move beyond. So now you're developing your own software products.
Yeah, and I think that came out of the experience really of working with national policing programs, and particularly with the austerity measures, the past few years, and the reduction in police officers. We were always looking at ways that we could help support policing to operate more efficiently, more effectively, manage demand a little bit better, and particularly one of the programs and portfolios that we worked in looked at the digital transformation of policing, and part of that work was to identify potential future threats to information. We live in a very digital society. Here we all are, video conferencing, and everyone from your small daughter up to your grandmother seems to be using some sort of video conferencing, and they've all got mobile devices. Everyone's living their lives online, which is great. The problem is it does come with sort of threats to information as well. As we hear about cyber threats, hacking, etc. But we're also getting into the stage now where we're starting to identify threats against the information that's actually carried out and conducted within video conferencing and things like that. So we decided to take the experience that we had in consulting and then start to build products from that actually help to address some of these threats and actually help to make organizations operate more confidently, particularly when using digital.
It's quite a brave move. It's
yeah.
It's quite. It sounded really easy, Jed, moving from consulting into developing software products. But I mean, that's a big move in itself. So it kind of begs the question: what are these products?
Well, there's two products that we have at the moment, and luckily, Gary, because you do know us and we share the offices, you've very usefully put those banners behind you. MEA Connexus and MEA Fuse are the two products that we actually have in production in a live environment now. MEA Connexus is really important to us, and particularly, you know, as we're talking on this kind of video conferencing solution, we recognise that there's lots of video conferencing, WebEx, etc., that's out there. What we wanted to do was provide organisations with a way to actually be able to engage with their customers, whether that's the public for policing, whether that's clients for law firms, etc., but to be able to engage with them and be confident that the content of that meeting, if it's a formal engagement, can't ever be challenged at a later date. You know, and so we hear about deep fakes, and we know now as well that it's very easy to manipulate video and the content of meetings. You know, and it's not daft to assume that people will be able to do this in real time in the future. We can already have false backgrounds, etc. So we developed MEA Connexus as a platform where that engagement is important. It could be a board meeting, it could be a witness interview, it could be a client meeting for a solicitor, anything where the content could be challenged at a later date. We make it immutable through our platform. So it's just purely around that and really focuses on that use case.
Can I ask you, do you think that obviously now that more and more things like this are happening over video, that you're going to see video evidence being used more and more in a legal setting?
I think so, and I mean, it's something that Jill would be good to speak to, because we're obviously COVID's forced a massive cultural shift onto our world and our adoption of these kind of platforms, and I think we will see more remote interviews. You know, why actually send someone traveling 2 hours to interview someone face to face when you can actually do it online, and but you can do it securely. Bearing in mind as well with MEA Connexus, it's encrypted for all the data in transit, all the data at rest, it's encrypted. So it's a secure platform, and that you can be confident that it can't be changed in the future. And the difficulty is, as more and more people adopt different technologies, the more exposed they become to threat. And so it'll become easier, it will become cheaper for people to be able to actually alter the content of meetings and make it look very, very convincing.
So excuse my terminology, Jill, if I get this wrong, but is that evidence proof? Does that actually then substantiate a file, be it a video file, that's actually usable in case law, or in a police circumstance, or within the court of law? Is that
yeah, that
far ahead and advanced?
Yeah, and that was really important to us, because particularly from a policing perspective, you know, if you're interviewing a witness or a victim, that becomes evidence, and you don't want that interview or the evidence to be challenged at a later date. So we use a technology called blockchain technology. It's the technology that sits behind cryptocurrency, Bitcoin, etc., the transfer of high value assets. But we use that technology to actually make video interviews immutable. And rather than delving into the technology itself and boring everyone to death, effectively, it's a way of actually creating a digital evidence bag around the video interview and the content of the video interview. MEA Fuse, our other product, does the same thing, but it does that for any kind of digital media. So that might be a legal document, it might be a photograph, it might be some copyright documents or media that you want to copyright. It's really important, that digital evidence bag and that analogy, because we make anything that's actually any interview that's conducted through Connexus or any media that's submitted to MEA Fuse, we essentially put it into a digital evidence bag and make it tamper evident.
So there's a huge appetite, and Jill, you'll be better positioned to answer this, but there's a huge appetite on television to watch these terrific shows on TV that show police at work, and I must confess I'm addicted to them. I love them. I think they're fabulous. But obviously we see clips of interviews at the police station, which you've got the CCTV in the room, and that looks safe and secure. But I'm assuming there must be lots of interviews and questioning and the like happening in people's homes or different places that isn't as secure then in that case. Is that right?
Yes, and I'll just pick up on a point that Jed made about travelling to see witnesses. And so you can imagine in central London, if you have an incident, the number of witnesses that you're likely to have to that incident and where those witnesses have come from, far and wide, quite often all the four corners of the world. And you need to determine quite quickly how important is this witness. Some will naturally have seen more than others. And you need to be able to filter, if you like, those that are really important and saw what was relevant evidentially, and those who just heard something post the event. And MEA Connexus gives you that opportunity to very quickly, easily and cheaply find out, talk to the witness, what did they actually see? And depending on what they had to say as to whether or not you would then send officers to actually take a more detailed statement, or if you're just going to thank them for their time.
It's interesting to pick up on the word cheaply, because it's people want things faster, more flexible, they want things cheaper, but actually cost it must be quite a big implication in a big criminal case, for example. I mean, you might have officers travelling, God knows where, I mean, often overseas even, I suspect, that this clearly erases the need for officers to be travelling around and the like.
Well, it's even more extreme than that, because it's all about cost effectiveness, and depending on the seriousness of the case as to whether or not you think, actually, do we really need to pursue this, or should we be pursuing it because the cost is disproportionate to the level of the criminality or the likely outcome at court. So it would be unusual for someone to make a decision that we're not going to go and speak to that witness because they live too far away, or it's too difficult to get hold of them. Or worse still, we have to go through the legal process and go and via the local force in the home country. And of course, you're then speaking to an officer, perhaps in one of the European countries or another country. They don't love that investigation like you do. They just... And you're trying to inspire them with regards to what you need evidentially from that witness. And it's on their list of things to do, and it's not a priority for them because they've got local stuff to deal with that's far more important than you, who want to go and see a witness who lives some distance away anyway. And of course, they'll go and they might just pay lip service to it and then give you a fraction of what you really need or what you want. When it's your investigation, you know what you want from that witness. Yeah. And by speaking to them like this, face to face, you can determine, are they a good witness? What emphasis can you put on what they saw or what they heard, or the credibility of the witness?
So that word, Jed, that I often hear kind of tagged to Connexus, and I'd want you to give it some context for me. Immutable. Why is it immutable? What makes it immutable? What is immutable about this? And why is that any different than we're talking on Teams today? And by no means was that anything to do with Connexus. It was because I forced the issue on Teams. But the point being, where's the immutability on Teams or Zoom, and why is Connexus different? And is that unique to Connexus?
It is unique to Connexus. Microsoft Teams, Zoom, they're great products, and Teams we use internally to collaborate within our own company, as you do. And from that point of view, it's a fantastic tool. That's what Microsoft have developed it for. We developed MEA Connexus to provide immutable records. Immutable being it can't be changed, at least not changed without your knowledge. And that's where that kind of analogy of the digital evidence bag comes into play, because, you know, the way, and when we say it's immutable, to explain, I guess, to what level, if we took a video interview and after the interview edited just 1 pixel on 1 frame of that video interview, we would be able to tell that it's been changed. And so as soon as that interview is conducted, the record's made immutable at that point. It doesn't mean to say that you can't take a copy of it and make some edits to it, as people often do, but you've always got that original, that record of truth, as it were, that you could go back to, share with other parties as well. So, you know, if the police were using it and they wanted to disclose information to a defence solicitor can have a copy of it. They can check themselves whether it's actually been edited after that interview was concluded. So it takes away that kind of challenge about the content of the video. And I suppose the problem comes that if you are challenged on the content of a video interview, and I don't know, for example, a client may say that the content had been edited for the purpose of the organisation that conducted the interview, the organisation would always be able to prove that it hadn't, and that's what's really key.
And that's presumably where the judge can make a safe call in a case that actually this is evidence that's worthy to be presented to the court in that scenario. That I'm assuming that's the case. Would that be right, Jill?
Yes, and even better still, it means that the defence then can't challenge the integrity of the interview.
Sure.
So immutable record, and that saves so much time and heartache, and means obviously the defence have to find something else to.
And cost and speed. Let's be honest. I mean, the speed aspect must come into this as well. It's kind of packaging things up quickly, and I suppose there's a public benefit here that actually things are happening at a much faster pace. So logically, and me being a simple-minded young man, logically, it would seem that the legal services audience is the logical place that this would kind of waterfall down to, because if we can get legal services companies using this product up to police into courts, that would seem to make sense, or am I making too many connections there?
So for me personally, this isn't just about a police tool. This is one that can be used commercially for a whole range of organisations or companies. And for instance, I've actually used it for investigations to speak to witnesses, both here and abroad. And as you say, the time saving is phenomenal, and the ease with which it can be used takes the stress off the witness. So you're actually getting the best from the witness. The other way that I've used it is in tribunals and case conferences, but it can be used, for instance, for recruitment, discipline boards, depositions, will writing. So it's not just a police tool, it's a commercial tool for any company or organisation that wants to validate the integrity of that interview.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose any regulated industry to some degree that's kind of can be held to account is, I mean, not that everybody can't be held to account, but regulation and being held to account, that type of security and secure usage is, now the word immutable starts to really come into play, doesn't it?
Yeah, and there's, I mean, really interesting sort of features within MEA Connexus, which I'm going to say, aren't I? But you know, it's not just about the video interview, it's about the media that you share with other participants in the video interview as well. So if it's a case that you wanted to share a legal document and you want to see it witnessed and signed, all those participants could literally witness, once you've actually sent the document using MEA Connexus, because you can share media through it, someone can actually sign it, show that they've signed it, they can show their passport to confirm their identity, to say who they are. All of that record is immutable.
That's, from a recruitment perspective, that's the thing that Pete and I have been looking at the tool for, is for secure interviews with candidates. But we've become much more aware these days of fraud. We've become much more aware of the people being presented to us isn't necessarily the person being presented. We're clearly conscientious of visas and people moving across borders and the like. So you know, partly the reason that we've been quite excited about the product is proof of identity. sharing packages of immutable videos with clients and actually talking and showing them the conversation that we might have had with a candidate, and actually, allowing the client to look at that. But I mean, you've not mentioned it, but one of the lovely tools it's got for us, it actually it starts to give you copy of the conversation as well, doesn't it? It's I have to forget the phrase, I do apologise, but it actually turns it into a usable document that actually.
Yeah, we're really pleased that it's speech to text transcription.
Speech to text, yes.
And I think we've all watched the police program.
Yeah, if it's not starting anybody watching, then they must be bonkers, because that is the coolest thing in the world. Because the idea of doing this and then going back and actually transcribing this conversation, sending crackers. And it's such a time saver.
Jill confirmed this, but for a transcriber in the police, that they're few and far between, so actually finding one is difficult. But then a police officer can then have to do that themselves. Yeah. So that's taken a uniformed police officer, or a detective, and putting them in a position of having to transcribe a video interview rather than doing the stuff they really want to do, being visible on the streets. Yeah. But the speech text transcription is great, because what it actually does, we wanted to present it almost like a kind of a witness statement to that standard. So it actually time codes the speech to text transcription. So it'll show you the time that someone said something, the name of the person that actually said it, and the content of what they said. It's by no means 100% accurate on the content. We've all been there with Siri and Alexa, and I'm probably going to set a load of them off now, aren't I? But we've all been there with those, and they do mishear you, or it doesn't quite translate you properly. But for a 2-hour interview, that's a lot of transcription to do, and if you get 80% of the way there through the speech to text transcription, it's a massive time saver.
Yeah. And you're using this in anger then, are you? You're actually using the product now, and
I am, and I think also just talking about the transcription aspect of the software, is what's important is not only what somebody says, but the way that they say it. And that's what's missing from a written statement. Whereas if you've got a video evidence of someone's witness statement, and you can see how passionate they are about what they saw, what they heard about their witness evidence, that makes such a huge difference. It actually brings the evidence to life in a way that a written statement doesn't.
Sure.
Do you think you could ever see this developing into, software that layers over it that can actually recognise facial recognition, whether they're lying and things like that?
It's funny you should say that, because there's been great conversations around that, particularly with the Americans. Are very keen on detecting if someone's lying or not, and I don't think we're quite ready for that in the UK at the moment. It might.
Americans love a lie detector test, don't they?
Yeah. Yeah, but the lie detector test is slightly different, because actually I'm a great believer in the lie detector tests in polygraph. And again, it's not used a great deal in the UK, but I've worked abroad in countries where it is used a lot. And the Americans, of course, like it a lot. They use it an enormous amount. But again, it's probably a little bit sudden for the UK market at the moment.
I kind of know it is, so I must confess I know the answer, Jed, but I think it's worth feeding into the conversation. But this can be used on mobiles as well. So this is as user friendly. It's technology agnostic as well, so it kind of land anywhere.
Absolutely, and we really wanted to. We wanted to make it as accessible as possible. There's probably two aspects to that people want to use technology to support their work. They don't want to work to try and use technology. And so everything about the design of the products is about making them easy to use, particularly for customers and the public. And going back to the policing kind of use cases, people don't necessarily want to download a police application onto their phone. So,
not, Jed.
Well, who knows? But the interesting thing, can you imagine the privacy concerns?
Jed, I didn't even want to put the COVID thing on my phone. Never mind actually inviting Bedfordshire Police onto my phone. It's not going to happen.
But it's an interesting one, because where we made it easy, you don't have to download any software at all. It will use any device's web browser.
Right.
So you can use it on Android, you can use it on an iPad, on an iPhone, on your laptop, on a desktop, as long as you've got internet connectivity, a camera and a microphone.
See, I love that. And what's wrong to say about Microsoft? They're brilliant. The products are brilliant, but the problem is these tools are so onerous sometimes. You know, my home PC won't actually kick off now and actually boot up until it's actually loaded Teams. It's slowed the bloody thing down by God knows how long. It's just, you know, that aspect of it being agnostic is really quite appealing, because yeah, you kind of sell your soul a little bit, don't you? I've kind of gone down the Apple route as well. So nothing in my house, not even the dog goes for a walk without Apple saying it's okay, for Christ's sake. That's quite appealing to me, to be fair.
Yeah, no, it is. And I mean, it's, you know, it's using new technologies, and they're just getting better and better and better. And we just wanted to make it really lightweight, not be reliant on a particular device, or you have to have this, etc. It won't work with old web browsers. We do know that, because it doesn't support the new technologies. But everyone updates their devices now to the latest version. I mean, I think Apple sort of cut you off, don't they, if you don't update your iOS device. Yeah. But you know, so it's making use of that new technology. And Pete, just to go back on the facial recognition stuff, it isn't really there yet, as Jill says, and particularly in the UK, there's lots of questions around it. But in the future, you know, that we have the video files, and as technology gets better, there's no reason why you couldn't actually start to do facial analysis and, you know, sort of sensitivity analysis across the video file.
Which makes the, I guess, the secure nature of the files that you know, using the blockchain even more important. I mean, like old evidence, you have to go back over it sometimes. Cases get reopened.
Yeah. You
know, more and more digital files are going to be re-looked at, I guess, in the future.
Absolutely, and that's an interesting point, actually, because you say about the files in the blockchain. It's probably just to reassure people that the blockchain we use is what's called a public blockchain, and a blockchain is effectively a distributed ledger. And once an entry is made into that ledger on the internet, it can never be changed. And that's the whole nature of the technology. What we don't do is store the actual video interview itself in blockchain, because we have had a few questions where people have said, well, you're sending all our video interviews up to public blockchain. We're not. They're all stored in a secure cloud storage area. And in fact, we're quite generous, because when anyone signs up for MEA Connexus, we give them 1 terabyte of cloud storage, secure cloud storage. It's encrypted to 256-bit AES, which is good. It's secure, but 1 terabyte's a lot of storage as well. That we work out that's over 1,000 1-hour-long interviews. So, you know, it's quite a lot of stuff. I suppose the other important thing to note is it's not stuck there. People can download those and store them on their own on-premise storage, or put them into their digital asset management systems and all that sort of stuff.
So this presumably, I mean, in the context of global policing, this is not UK policing. This is fit for purpose for or UK positioned law firms. I mean, this is a global product that presumably is quite innovative in any market, any country at the minute. I mean, is there much competition in terms of other products, or are you kind of breaking new ground?
No, we believe we're breaking new ground, and blockchain is not a new technology. Well, I suppose it's a new technology, but it's certainly its use in this kind of use case is very new. We do a lot of research before we start to invest in developing a product to actually see, are we wasting our time? Is there something that's already out there? But we haven't seen another solution like this. And you're right, in terms of global interest, we're talking to lots of different resellers overseas in various different regions. We do actually have a fraud investigation firm that are using it in Scandinavia. So it's, you know, it's a global use case. Everyone performs some sort of investigation or has a formal meeting that they need to record and make immutable.
I think that's what we're seeing is that the legal tech industry is booming and is disrupting the legal industry. You know, there's increasing pressures on lawyers to, you know, be more effective with their time and, you know, higher billings. You know, there's a shortage of lawyers out there, so they're they're being required to be more efficient, and the use of technology is driving that, whether it's secure communication, file sharing, report writing, you name it, will writing, all of those things are being driven towards technology, so it's making them more efficient. But I really like the idea that this can help save time. I certainly wish lawyers charge less money, that's for sure. So, to allow them to be more efficient and have better engagement with their customers in a secure manner that allows them to use that information for the future, I think it's fantastic. And I think one of the other cases that you shared with us before, particularly is children's services, where you have to interview children in their homes, for example, and you need some sort of, even from the age of 6 months, my children were looking at a phone and recording themselves, so it's second nature to them. So, there's the usability of it as well as the cost saving, which I think is fantastic.
Yeah, fantastic.
So, it sounds brilliant, Jed, and you're beyond product development. This is tested, authorised, certificated. What kind of gives us the stamp of approval, as it were?
Yeah, there's probably a couple of aspects, because all of us at Issured come from that defence and security background, and Jill's been there. We've all worked in very highly secure environments where you can't even carry a mobile phone into the office that you work in. You have to put it in a locker. And so, whenever we look at products, we always think of the information risk first. It just comes naturally to us. There's no point doing something unless we can make sure it's secure and it's protected. We're very lucky because we have colleagues in the company who've worked at Cheltenham and worked in that environment to ensure that systems are secure, systems are safe. And as part of the process of developing a product and testing the product, at the same time, we're always engaged with our cybersecurity advisors to ensure that the product is safe from an information perspective, that it mitigates all those risks. And so in terms of sort of stamps, it's assured to UK official. And we also comply with the National Cybersecurity Centre cloud principles as well, because cloud software is becoming more of a thing and in use more within government and public sector. And I think it's really important to make sure, particularly when NCSC is looked at as that kind of exemplar of how we should actually do things, how we should protect our information, we always make sure that we align wherever we can with what the advice is at the time, because it gives other people's assurances as well.
Whilst you're talking, my mind kind of whirs and thinks about commercial propositions and opportunities, but we've been talking to some law firms, but some of the law firms we've been dealing with, they're more 150s, Jill, and they're probably localised to the northwest or the northeast, and fair-sized companies are 250, 300 staff, but I suppose their practice services the immediate area, but looking at things like depositions or will writing and the like, this actually gives them an aspect to actually go beyond their natural borders almost. It effectively gives them a digital online product that you don't have to necessarily be 2 minutes down the road. It's that all of a sudden actually opens up a completely new audience and customer to you to some degree. Idea, need to TM that, I think, somewhere, but that's my kind of commercial brain thinking there.
I think it makes it easier for law firms to actually see the customer as well, because we all know what it's like when you phone up somebody like a law firm and trying to get a date in the diary that suits both parties is quite difficult. Whereas by using this system, it just makes it so quick and easy.
Jill, common courtesy, at £10 an hour, you want to see the whites of somebody's eyes, the whites of their eyes, don't you? It's just good courtesy.
£10 an hour, I want your lawyer.
I was going to say £10 an hour, Gary. I think you're...
I don't want to upset anybody and say £100 an hour.
Yeah, absolutely. It depends, doesn't it, on what service you want from them, as to whether or not you actually physically need to meet somebody, or if you can do just as good a job as required by using video conferencing.
Sure.
Yeah, I think when this started, I think probably like a lot of people, I was anti-video. It was always, there was that exceptional thing that you did, wasn't it? And whereas now it's it's just happened. In fact, people just start video calling you out of the blue. And I got to a stage where I was even frustrated when I couldn't even video time my water company because I wanted to deal with a problem. Do you know what I mean? All of a sudden, when you miss that human interaction, you want it more and more, more often. And actually, I can see organisations, using it more, but wanting a solution that is more secure and actually is something they can use at a later date. Because now they record conversations on the telephone. That's probably about as advanced it gets when it comes to some sort of even customer service. I think well,
we were talking about this the other day, weren't we, about call centres and the like. It's they're so anonymous, a call centre, but actually the irony is call centres and customer experience and customer service is actually so much warmer when you're actually looking face to face with somebody. It's that empathy and that kind of human interaction which we're all kind of desperate for. You don't get in a call centre because obviously you're on the phone to someone and you don't know where they are, who they are. It just, you can think of, we were not necessarily talking about Connexus, but we were talking about video and actually how it's probably going to start being used in all kinds of scenarios that we've not really considered in the past.
No, I think you're absolutely right. And I mean, it's something that we thought about when we were designing MEA Connexus at the outset was the ability for the police to, I mean, we're talking about, working more efficiently, more effectively, that it saves time. Ultimately, what it means is that the police can actually meet more demand. Yeah. And demand's a real issue. When you've had your sort of staff numbers have dropped, crime rates are rising, a lot of volume crime goes sort of unreported or unrecorded. But it's a really good way, actually, we had a case where there's a suspicious character wandering around the house looking in windows, and you kind of think, well, I think I'm going to ring up the police at this point. And you'll get a phone call back, which is great. But actually, wouldn't it be good to actually see someone in a uniform, even if it's not a warranted police officer, but just someone from, Hampshire, Constabulary, Thames Valley, wherever you are, and actually talking to you and say, what does they look like? And so, well, I actually took a picture on my phone, I can show you that. No, we know him, don't worry, it's not a problem. And, just that sort of more instant reassurance and addressing some of these sort of crime reports. And from a public satisfaction point of view, I think you do get more from actually speaking face to face with someone.
Undoubtedly.
Without doubt, I think actually it's an opportunity for the police to show the public that they genuinely do care.
Yeah.
It's not just another phone call, but they actually do care.
When you're in that, when you're in that, decision we mentioned right at the start between cost over, over service, I think that's when you're on a route to a hiding. Really, I think if you go to a case where you go out and whatever the travelling time is getting there to spend 20 minutes having a conversation or not, as the case may be, we had to reschedule this meeting and it made no difference whatsoever. We just bumped it forward. But had we travelled somewhere to meet you and then you was like, I can't make it, or something else has happened, and life gets in the way of everything. So, I think that's the key thing, is that lost time. And you're absolutely right. I would be much happier having a conversation with a clothed police officer, and being able to share my problems, and then for them to say, yeah, that's fine, we'll get on with it. That extra 2 hours either way of the journey or whatever it looks like, can be spent actually doing something as opposed to commuting or report writing or whatever it looks like. So it's a surprise that it hasn't happened sooner, if you see what I mean.
Yeah.
I think finishing
off, actually, sorry, because talking about a global market, we've got some colleagues in the US that we talk to on a regular basis, and myself and Jill are part of the International Association of Chiefs of Police. So we get to engage with the US quite a lot, and when we talk about travel time, it amazes me, because if you look at Texas and the size of and the geography of North America, there was a chief of police there that was saying to me, to do a witness interview that take 20 minutes, half an hour, sometimes I have to travel for 10 hours. It can involve a flight, so how can you warrant doing that when you've got this technology available? So
I think kind of going back to something you said there, Jill, and probably a good point to finish on. And I think that the public don't question the police's kind of caring. I don't think that's in question, but I think actually the public is frustrated that the police don't have time to do the job that they want to do. And I think ironically that that 10 minutes you might spend with somebody, be it on video or in person. But do you know what? On video, if it needs to be, I think the public accept that and would understand that. But that immediate FaceTime, that reassurance that you get, that empathy, that understanding, that feedback, that's incalculable. I mean, that effectively could push forward our kind of police service by years. I mean, that's, you know, people talk about customer experience these days and the customer journey. That's it encapsulated in one moment, and you can see why it's so difficult to drive that into this. But you can apply that to any sector, I assume, and any service. You know, if you're paying for something, you kind of want to see who you're paying the money to, don't you? One way or another.
Yeah.
And actually, with the police using this as a service, it can undo some of the customer service damage that's been done in the past. Where, and we all know, you phone up a huge company, an organisation or a government department, and when you actually get to speak to a human being, you're so grateful. You are, absolutely, because you're expecting to get recorded, press 1 for this and 3 for that. So actually to then see somebody and you can see the empathy and they genuinely care, what a difference that makes to your satisfaction as a customer.
I completely agree.
But judging by some of the customer services calls I've had lately, they do not want to be seen. They do not care.
This working from home thing's got to change. People got to stop wearing the pajamas at 4 o'clock in the afternoon.
I have to quickly iron a shirt.
That's how we want a shirt in months, Jed, isn't it?
Yeah.
Fantastic. Guys, we've covered lots and lots, and it didn't sound salesy. I think it sounded interesting, and I think it's probably opened the conversation to other people that might want to learn a little bit more. And by all means, we'd put people in touch with you guys for maybe a further chat and further conversation, or we can steer them in the right direction. I know there's lots of great content and supporting evidence and maybe bits and bobs that you can't necessarily share on the video now, but should anyone want to learn more, I'm sure both of you are happy to pick up the phone and have a chat, or get online and actually have a video conference. That'd be cool, wouldn't it?
More than happy to. Yeah, we put our money where our mouth is, as it were, and you know, if people want to come and talk to us on MEA Connexus, they can do so.
Fantastic. Yeah.
Brill. Have a great afternoon, guys. Thanks very much for your time.
Nice to meet you. See you.
Okay.
Bye.
Cheers.